SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
When addiction takes control, getting help can change everything. Parkwood Behavioral Health System offers compassionate, evidence-based addiction treatment for adults right here in Mississippi. Take the first step today. Visit parkwoodbhs.com. Healing starts here. With limited exceptions, physicians are not employees or agents of this facility.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Will East, in for the vacationing rhino. We're in the Element Wealth Studio, where we'll be guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Will.
It's another hot one.
Well, I was just looking as I fired up my laptop here, and you know the little banner at the bottom. Sometimes if you set it up, it'll kind of show you the current weather or the weather forecast. It says heat advisory. That's it's got the little triangle, yellow triangle with the thermometer graphic. So, yeah, it's hot. But I looked at the long-term forecast for the weekend. There's actually a little cold front that's moving through.
Really?
Going to cool it down to 90 here in central Mississippi.
A chilly 90.
90. Maybe a little bit of rain associated with it, like a 50% chance of some pop-up showers, which we could use this time of year because...
Let me tell you what happened to me the other day. I was driving home, and I've said this many times. I drive the Trace every day.
Yeah.
Which is, I love it. You know, it's beautiful.
It is.
At the same time, there's a lot of clearing, so there's parts of it where there's not a lot of trees, and so there's a lot of sun.
Yeah.
At least the part that I drive. And the other day I was driving home, and it's raining. I mean, it is pouring rain.
Thursday is when it rained real hard. Yeah.
When I left here, it's just started pouring rain. But the sun was out.
Yeah.
Now, explain that one, too. I could not see. I was blinded by the light, as the old song goes. I had to put on my sunglasses in this pouring rain because the sun was shining as it was raining. It was just weird.
Well, as the old saying goes, my parents used to use it, the devil's beating his wife. I have no idea what that means or where that came from.
That's what my wife said when I got home. The devil must be beating his wife.
I don't know what that means exactly and what the significance of that is when it's raining and the sun is out. But, yeah, I observed that as well. It did rain pretty good. I was pressure washing my driveway, and all of a sudden the rain ran me inside, and I waited for it to pass through and got back out. Played a little golf this weekend. It was hot, and every chance I got, I drove to the shade in between shots where it was considerably cooler. My wife and I celebrated our 45th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Saturday. Thoroughly enjoyed that. Had a little dinner and celebrated that with my children. 45 years. Man, that's a long time. Now, I got married on a day that was similar to the heat, the weather this past Saturday. It was July 25th, and that was in Biloxi. And we were wringing wet with the humidity, of course. But July 25th, of course, when you're that young, you don't think about that. You know, like, oh, it's going to be hot that time of year and stuff. But 45 years. Thank you, Julie Gill Gibert, for putting up with me for 45 years. I tell people, you know how we made this work? We're the only people that can live with each other. So that's quite an achievement, I guess, these days. And A lot of folks, unfortunately, split up before then. And so it's something that I look back on with a bit of pride and gratification. It's been a great, wild ride. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, and I look forward to the next number of decades with my wife. So that's where we are. A lot of stuff going on here at home as well as on the national stage. Much controversy here at home, Will, over this new platform the Department of Education implemented that our educators in the K-12 space are to use in the procurement of supplies. You know, honestly, just looking through it, and I'd love to get somebody on to talk about this, and we talked about that last week in our little prep meeting for the week. But would love to hear from the Department of Education, perhaps the Superintendent of Education, maybe a teacher or two, somebody to help us out. Mississippi Department of Education Chief Operating Officer Kim Wiggins, heavily involved in the implementation of this project. Maybe that's someone that can come help us out, help us understand this. We certainly don't want to make it harder for our teachers to purchase the supplies they need to operate their classroom. It's what they've implemented is a system called Class Wallet. It was launched earlier this month, and it replaced an old credit card program that was sent to educators to purchase classroom materials. So this Class Wallet is an online platform. Think of it as kind of an Amazon for school supplies, if you will. In fact, Amazon is one of the vendors that is integrated into the Class Wallet system, and purchases must be made through that platform. And so one of the teachers, looking at a report here, said, I have to get my purchases approved, and they have to go through somebody to go through Class Wallet to get approved. I've seen 2 to 4 days, and I've seen 5 to 10 days. So I guess I don't understand that. I mean, if you've scoured the universe of vendors, they being Department of Education, and you publish the various vendors that offer the products that are needed in a classroom, and those are published, you just select an order and they should be shipped to you. I don't really understand why the need for approval and the delays, because you only have a certain amount of money that's allocated. It's about $748 per educator for their classroom. $743.
So just to clarify, the old system was a bit of a mess because you would, from what I understand, you would have to submit all the things you wanted to buy. By the time you got all the stuff done, it was October or November, or in some cases December. My wife used to work in public schools.
That's right. Long after school
had begun. That's why you would have a lot of teachers that would do basically fundraisers on their own, or they would just go out and spend their own money. That was the case a lot of times.
Well, my daughter, I've shared this before, was a public school teacher for 9 years, and I would end up helping her out, to get her classroom outfitted and equipped in time for school to start.
So they roll out this Class Wallet system, and it's got some bugs, obviously, but it's supposed to be much more efficient. You've got these approved vendors. Now, that's also been a bone of contention because you can't do local people, obviously. Amazon, Walmart, I'm assuming there's some others on there, Staples. But you can't do local vendors because they're probably not set up for it. So that's been a bone of contention. Now, how often do you go buy school supplies from local vendors? I couldn't tell you.
I don't know that either. It's about $25 million that's allocated. That comes primarily from the Education Enhancement Fund for the purchase of school supplies, which gets a great deal of its funding from the Mississippi Lottery Corporation. Mm-hmm. So in accordance with our lottery law, the first $80 million produced by the Lottery Corp in a year is transferred to the state highway fund, and everything in excess of that goes to the education enhancement fund. Those dollars in that fund are allocated in accordance with the law that established that fund. That was several years ago, and there are several formulas. I've actually reviewed it before. There's several formulas in it. This much goes here and this much goes there, and a big chunk of that is for school supplies. The Early Learning Collaborative gets some of the money. There's money in there for capital investments such as stadiums and repair classroom, school buildings, etc. So, but a big chunk goes to school supplies. And so, that's the old way they used to do it. What the Mississippi Department of Education reports is that there would usually be about $1.7 million on average that was over the amount allocated to each teacher, and they'd have to go recover that. That's, according to the statement I'm seeing from the Chief Operating Officer, Wiggins. Interesting. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio today. It's State Senator Andy Berry. He's going to give us an update on the beef industry. He also serves as the executive director of the Mississippi Beef Council. Just getting started. Stay with us on Middays from the Element Well studio.
I move mountains for a Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Like the pine trees lining the winding road, I've got a name, I've got a name. Like a singing bird and the croaking toad, I've got a name, I've got a name. And I carry it with me like my daddy did, but I'm living the dream.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. So the whole thing, Will, has just turned out to be a bit of a mess. It doesn't seem like anybody's happy with it. But so this class wallet system, here's my take on it. The idea of centralizing procurement, I think, certainly has merit in terms of the convenience of that. One place, hopefully, everything you need is there, and you just select what you want for your classroom. Check
get a
out,
discount
boom.
that way,
right? And that's right, because you're taking advantage of the volume. And what you would hope is that the Department of Education has run some sort of competitive bid process to make sure that everything that's published on the site is low cost. These are commodities. I mean, it's not like, in my view at least, and I think this would be what most taxpayers would say. You know, when you're buying, I'm just going to make it easy, pencils, and I don't know if they still buy pencils or not, paper clips, paper. I mean, does it really matter who that comes from as long as it's the exact same product?
Yeah.
Should you pay a premium for that because it's your buddy? I'd say no, and I don't think most taxpayers would like that. And so centralizing that makes sense. Where it becomes a problem is if it's cumbersome, if it's tedious, if you got to go through some long. Why would you even have to do that? You got your money, so I don't get that. You got an account that's got your money in it. You just select what you want.
Yeah. I'm
just talking out loud. This is the way it seems to me like it ought to work. And you check out, and boom, it's on its way. Doesn't seem like that's the case now.
Well, I'll say this, Gerard.
Yeah.
32,000 cards, apparently.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a lot.
It is.
And this is the first month of it, basically, give or take. There's going to be some issues.
But this is a system in use in other states. Shouldn't we have, figured out what works, what doesn't?
You would think so.
Yeah. So, and again, I hate to be critical without talking to the people involved in it so that they can give their side. I don't want to sort of take sides here. I'm just saying, I think, in general, educators deserve convenience, expediency,
Yeah.
And the ability to just dispense with this task and get to teaching. And on the other hand, the taxpayers deserve to make sure our money's being spent efficiently and responsibly. Simple as that. Now, if there are local vendors, and again, I'm like you, I don't know who those might be, and that's just because of my lack of understanding of that world. But if they'd like to participate, I do think they ought to have an opportunity. Well, that would mean that the Department of Education would advertise for their offerings, and they would submit those, and those would be added.
Yeah.
And then there's a question of, well, does only one vendor win? That's the lowest price for that particular stock keeping. You call it SKU, or do we publish the top 5 and let you choose? I mean, there's different systems that you could implement along these lines, but it certainly needs to be fast. It needs to be. This is the reason you do this, not to make it more cumbersome, not to make it more tedious, certainly to eliminate the delays, because we want the classrooms to be equipped when school starts. And I've seen, and the other thing is that it makes me wonder, I saw some comments by teachers that said, well, I needed some stools, like little small stools, when we have like small group lessons, which is common, especially in the younger ages in the elementary. That makes sense, but there are none. So I had to go say, man, I need some stools, to purchase. And then I'm not sure, is that a school supply or is that a fixed asset that should be part of the building? You know what I'm saying? The classroom? I don't know, honestly. But what that does tell me is that maybe the Department of Education should have conducted some meetings with a cross-section of K-12 educators in the state and say, hey, look, this is what we're thinking about doing, and here's what is going to be available.
What issues might come up with this?
Yeah, exactly, before they implement it. And maybe that happened. I don't know. It doesn't appear to be the case just based on the feedback coming from various educators. So I hope we get this squared away. And I would say to those educators that say, you know what, I want to buy this product locally, okay, well, as long as it's no more than the same product as is available on the Class Wallet system, I'm cool with that. If you want to pay a premium for it, then you cover the excess cost out of your pocket, right? Because that is unnecessary inflated spending on the part of taxpayers. Now, I do have some experience in IT procurement, about 3.5 decades, with the state. And I got to tell you, Will, back in the early 90s, we worked with information, we being the vendors, the providers of IT solutions to states, the state agencies, I should say. We worked directly with information technology services to come up with a more efficient procurement model, because this is what was happening back in the 90s. Agencies were buying literally their first round of PCs. And it was crazy. You had to wait like 3 months to buy a PC when you went through all the complex procurement process. And we said, hey, look, why don't you just have a catalog? And that was hatched. It was called the Express Products List. And what ITS would do every 6 months is it put out specifications of various products, machines, that were just considered day-to-day type purchases, and vendors would provide their offerings, and they would publish the top 5 prices. And so an agency could pick. And the idea was you may have a better relationship, which makes a lot of sense in the IT world, with a company that might be a couple of dollars more than somebody else, but you don't want 14 different vendors in your shop when you're dealing with IT stuff. And it would allow the agencies to establish relationships. Well, that thing ultimately grew to the point where you could buy basic networking products and certain cybersecurity products, even cabling. Not the cable. I'm talking about cabling and cabling installation. As long as it wasn't like a major, there were some price, thresholds on it. That process has worked very well in the state of Mississippi now for 30 some odd years. So, kudos to ITS for working with us vendors back then to conceive of that platform, which serves the agencies very well. It eliminates all the drudgery and all the back and forth with I'm submitting a request and we go get a bid and we wait for the bids and we then get we figure out who wins and then we submit the final paperwork to make the purchase and all that kind of stuff. So I hope we get this cleaned up, because we certainly don't want the teachers to be burdened with this, but we also want to protect taxpayer investment. Yeah. So surely there's a way we can accomplish both. Just wanted to call attention to that. That's probably, at this point in the summer, that may be one of the bigger things going on from I guess you could call it a government perspective here in the state of Mississippi. Meanwhile, we're barreling towards the midterm elections.
Less than 100 days, right?
It's hard to believe, but this past weekend, the Democrat National Committee had a meeting and literally had a full-blown meltdown. That, by the way, according to the New York Times, the chair, Ken Martin, descended into what he called a growing sense of paranoia about his job security. They don't have any money. That's the problem. They're not raising any money. President Trump has $400 million in his war chest, $400 million that he, of course, can allocate to candidates. That's legal. The RNC has $130 million. $130 million. The DNC, on the other hand, has $2 million of debt. Unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So apparently tempers flared, and it's being reported that folks at this event were throwing phones at each other. They're arguing. Man, absolutely incredible.
And that's who you want to run the government?
I know. It's incredible. So even though Morning Joe at MS Now says this is not sustainable, this was on Sunday after the event over the weekend, talking about the DNC being flat broke, says anyone who cares about the Democrat Party would say enough. That's what old Joe Scarborough said. Apparently he talked to Ken Martin, the DNC chairman. Just absolutely incredible that they have a debt of $2 million as contrasted to the Republicans with a positive $130 million. That was mind-boggling when I saw that report. Wow. Will, there's a lot of concern about AI taking jobs, especially entry-level jobs. What do the actual data say? A brand new report coming right back.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So one of the concerns, as you know, Will, about AI is replacement of jobs and especially entry-level professional jobs. Those have always thought to be those occupations that are most at risk. But there's some recent reports, big employers in particular, they're hiring. They're saying, yeah, we're getting value out of AI, but we still need people, entry-level people, America's biggest companies. So, and it's across the industry spectrum. For example, CSX, they're in the railroad business. They've told investors, yeah, we plan to hire entry-level people to meet our corporate objectives. and to seize on these emerging technologies. We need people that understand this stuff, that can navigate it, that can put it to good use here in our company. Even Google, they had a reduction in force, and they came back and said, yeah, we're going to have to hire some more people. We intend to expand headcount, at least modestly. And then there's consulting firm Booz Allen Hamilton. Their chief operating officer told investors Friday, yeah, we need to accelerate hiring. We're behind. We're addressing that right now. So Booz Allen does a lot of work for the federal government. And last year, when the Trump administration slashed several federal contracts, which I think was a good thing to do because they did Booz Hamilton. I mean, the government said, you guys really need to justify your services and your cost. That honestly should have been done as part of the procurement process. But remember, that was Joe Biden, and anything that made sense was kind of off the table and out the window. But Booz Allen now reports very strong demand for its services, including national security. They provide lots of solutions for that for workers who need security clearances in the federal government. So interesting just to see that, and I honestly always felt like this would be the case. We've had disruptive technology in the past, and yeah, there are some occupations that maybe those ranks are shrunk or eliminated, but there's always an opening of brand new jobs and new occupations. Yeah. There are futurists who say, and I actually agree with this, that a child born today will occupy a job that's yet to be invented. It's not been invented yet. So think about that. Child born today. You can think 20 years ago. Think about a child of 25 years ago. A child born 25 years ago coming out of college today and going to work in a job. What are the chances that job existed 25 years ago when they were born? And that's what the futurists are saying. And I tend to agree with them that we're going to invent and create a lot of new occupations, many new jobs that are driven to a great extent by this technology transformation. This is cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to think 20 years ago, so 2006. Doesn't sound like that long ago.
I know, it doesn't.
But think about some of the things that you can do now that you couldn't do back then, or you had to have an extra person to do.
Yeah, that's right.
I watch the show Mad Men a lot. I love, that's one of my favorite shows. And one of the things I noticed it the other day. I never really paid attention to it, but when you watch the early seasons, they have an office pool. Rows and rows of these people that were just sitting there typing.
Yeah, right.
They had phone operators, in the building.
Yeah.
You don't need those anymore.
That's right. Well, for those that have ever driven down Capitol Street in Jackson, right? So if you're, I can't remember, is it maybe Lamar Street there? There's a building on the south side, doesn't have a lot of windows, looks like it's about 3 stories. So it would be across the street, just down the street a little bit to the west from the governor's mansion, across the street from Trustmark's headquarters, right there, right? So many probably don't know, Will, in its day, that was Bell South's switching center.
Yeah.
And it was jam-packed, to your point, full of operators.
Yep.
Back when you had to have operators to make phone calls.
Yeah. Unplugging, plugging, doing all that stuff.
That's why it doesn't have any windows, because it was full of a bunch of equipment, old analog switching equipment and operators that would assist you to make calls. Yeah, so right. That's the kind of stuff we don't have anymore, but that's also when you had to pay for long distance. When's the last time you paid for long distance? Think about that.
That was a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah. And I remember even back, Will, in the 80s, the telecom carriers knew that the days were limited of long-distance revenue, as well as you used to have to pay for local service, right? Yeah. Who the heck's got a landline in their phone, a landline phone in their house anymore where they're paying for local service?
I think my mom was the last person I know that got rid of her landline phone.
Not many around. So,
and that's been almost 10 years ago that she got rid of that. I mean, it's just, I don't know anybody that has one.
But on the other hand, the Apple Store's got an army of employees in it, right? In fact, the one here locally, not far from where we are.
Only Apple Store in Mississippi.
Only one in Mississippi. You saw they moved to a new location because they needed more space.
Yep.
Because generally speaking, you walk in the place anytime.
It's jam-packed.
It's jam-packed. It's like they're selling air. You got to have it, So, but get this tool maker, Snap-on. Most people know who those guys are. They say they are on a hiring spree. They need more people, both in the back office ranks, the manufacturing ranks, the account manager, distribution. And CSX, the big railroad company, said its train and engine service headcount will increase modestly in the coming months to help meet higher demand. I'm reading from their report, even as it looks to technology to make up for the attrition in other parts of the company. So this, I think, was expected. I think that a lot of the concerns were overblown, and that's a good thing. To Jensen Huang, I repeat his statement regularly because I think it makes total sense. He, of course, the CEO of NVIDIA, that's the chip maker that powers all this AI stuff. He said, AI is not taking your job. It's someone who uses and knows AI that's going to take your job, which I think is why it's important that even at the young ages, we're exposing our young folks, our students, to the power of this technology so they have some familiarity with it. So think of it like what we thought coding was 15, 20 years ago. You got to have some exposure to program coding, right? Because there's going to be huge demand for that. And by the way, there was a lot of talk about coders being cannibalized by AI. There's some recent reports. That ain't the case. I knew that. Just being an old coder, we used to call ourselves bit twiddlers. So, yeah, cranking out the actual code itself, but someone who understands how to instruct those tools to crank it out, who understands the functional aspect of designing software. I mean, this nutty notion that, we're not going to need these software companies anymore. We're just going to sit down, you and me, and tell the computer, create me a software application. No, that's just not happening. We're not there yet. People that understand how to create those tools, those platforms, those are still in high demand, and they have very specialized skills that are not going to be replaced. That's the creative aspect, human innovation that not only is surviving, it's thriving, and we need it more than ever. So this was just an interesting report in the Wall Street Journal, by the way, today, about big companies. In fact, the title of the article, Big Companies Are Starting to Hire Again, Defying Predictions of AI Wipeout. I agree. Interesting. Now, there's another report in Bloomberg about job hunters are using AI to cheat in interviews, and then they're failing at the office. So, that's nothing new. I think what's new is that you've got nothing new in terms of someone misrepresenting themselves.
Yeah,
as part of an interview, as part of their job application. In our industry, especially from a technical talent perspective, the litmus test for that was your certifications. Well, in the old days, we'd make someone literally bring their certificate. This shows that I achieved it. But as that became more automated, it was pretty easy to go look it up. Hey, give me your number for your CCIE designation. You look it up. Well, that's not in there. You really aren't one. Well, I'm working on it. That ain't the same, though, right? We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio. Andy Berry at 11:05.
If you're ever...
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Times are hard, you're afraid to pay the fee, so you find yourself somebody who can do the job for free.
So last week, the president announced that something really big may be on tap for Iran. I mean, from a military perspective. And there were reports that 150 medical personnel had been deployed to Germany. And that would be, of course, to handle injuries sustained in combat. That is the only reason you could think of that they would be just kind of abruptly assigned to that post. That's where they would be airlifted. And so there was a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation about the president ordering a ground invasion, potentially. But then he abruptly announced, well, we're going to pause it. Now, we've seen this before, and that's because he indicated that the Islamic Republic of Iran signaled it was not going to attack any ships in the Strait. But I think they've done that before, and then they've reneged it. They've violated that commitment. So 13 straight nights of attacks on Iran certainly had degraded their ability to attack commercial shipping that moves through the Strait there. But last Friday, the president essentially backed off, and on Sunday, yesterday, he said that the army of Iran had halted its retaliation for 13 nights of attacks. So a spokesman from Iran said the U.S. may have devised other scenarios for the coming days, but the current situation is not what they desire. If the Americans insist on continuing the war and airstrikes, the geography of the war will expand. I don't know exactly what that means. That, sounds like the typical rhetoric that they like to spout. I think their bark is much bigger than their bite, but they certainly have shown that they have the ability to cause problems for commercial shipping, and that's the main thing with respect to moving oil through the Strait to get the price of oil down. Now, it is down today on the heels of this news, of this announcement from the president that, okay, we're going to pause this and see what happens and see if we can achieve some diplomatic solution. And certainly that's been in the works for quite some while. I did catch that Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, he minced no words. He was quite direct in saying, you know what, if we need to continue on with this effort, with this strategy to eliminate their nuclear capability, and if that means we have to deal with the pain of high gas prices for, he said, months, several months. Gosh, I hope it doesn't take several months. So be it. You can't deny that there are political ramifications of this. You just can't. Folks just at home are more focused on the price of gas, so-called affordability. Now, Brent crude is down today below $90 a barrel. It touched 100 last week when the attacks resumed and the president said, yeah, we could have something really big in store. And shipping through the Strait of oil came to almost a halt. So it's down below $90 as this halt, at least right now, but it just feels like we've been here before. This is another chapter in the cycle, and I certainly hope that we get some resolution soon. Our U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, was asked on Meet the Press yesterday whether the president had decided against escalations, and he said, I wouldn't go that far at all. Quote, the president is keeping all options on the table, said Ambassador Waltz. What the president is doing right now, as we've seen all along, is giving the talks some space. Ambassador Waltz said the talks were, quote, ongoing. I find it curious that our side says we're talking and their side says we're not. I think some of that is just because of the way their leadership operates. It's about saving face as they see it. We can't let our people know that we're actually talking to come to some peaceful settlement. On the other side of this is, if you've checked it out, we're dealing with 4% inflation here, 88% inflation in Iran. Folks are starving. It's a huge economic problem. So Operation Economic Fury, I think, is doing more of the trick. Coming right back. Stay with us.
Of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We've got Will East at the controls today. Rhino taking a bit of a vacation. It's Monday. That means it's a 2-hour show. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, comes your way at 12:05. Right now, we kick off Hour 2 with Senator Andy Berry. He serves Copiah, Jefferson Davis, Lawrence, and Simpson counties. That's what our data shows. Is that right, Senator?
That's correct. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
And also, of course, the executive director of the Mississippi Beef Council. You're a cattle farmer yourself. That's right.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
I tell people all the time I have night and weekend visitation of my cattle. That's when I get to see them.
That's awesome. Well, first, tell us about the beef industry. I had the pleasure, Senator, of speaking to the Leake County Cattlemen's Association.
I heard you
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, good people. We're good folks.
Yeah, I know that. And a very integral part of our state's economy as well. And we certainly get that. One of the things that surprised me a bit, Senator, was how many of those cattle farmers are also row crop farmers, maybe even poultry farmers as well.
Most of our farmers in Mississippi, particularly outside the Delta, are diversified into something else. Like myself, I have a town job. You get out in the country and you're going to have chicken farmers, you're going to have some row crop farmers, you're going to have tree farmers, people that do other things besides just cattle. And that's typically, historically, the cattle has not been able to support a family just on their own. The last few years it's been pretty good, but historically that's just not the case. So you've got to diversify to make a living farming these days. And it's a shame it's that way, but you do. And it's good that our farmers here in Mississippi have the opportunity to do other commodities to make things work.
Well, would you say, Senator, that to some extent that's kind of a hedge if you're concentrated in one aspect of agriculture and it is experiencing some economic difficulty, that you've got other commodities?
No, without a doubt. Without a doubt. It's just the rising tide rises all ships type of thing. And so and that's a good thing, particularly with row crops or cattle. They work well together because there's some seasonality to things there that you can work on one, and then other seasons you work on the other. With our poultry farmers, the fertilized byproduct of the chicken farms are great for growing grass or other crops. Yeah. So it works well together. There's a lot of synergies there.
Makes sense. Okay, so my understanding is that in general we're seeing some financial challenges across the spectrum of agriculture from a farmer's perspective. But maybe the bright spot is beef and cattle at this point, with prices elevated mainly because there's just a shortage of cattle, right? Is that true? Help us out there.
From strictly commodity price, yes.
Okay.
The beef cattle have been above bar compared to soybeans, cotton, corn have been suffering for the last few years. I think soybeans have rebounded a little bit. Corn tries. It just can't seem to get
Corn's
going.
Just been depressed for a while.
Yeah,
huh?
just can't get. They're those guys. I don't know how they're doing it. They're very great in their yields. I guess it helps them.
They're too good.
With that. Yeah, but that's the only reason they're there is that they are good and they can yield so great. But the beef cattle have been kind of the exception the last 2 or 3 years going back. But before that, you've got a 20-year run where beef cattle were just you were just barely breaking even. So occasionally you've got to make a little profit. Yeah. And so we've seen that the last few years, and that's transcribed to our grocery prices. It's no secret that beef is up a little bit. Yeah. And so we see that in our shopping when we go to the grocery store, to the restaurant, and we're thankful that the consumer still seems to choose beef. Yeah. And we think that we don't think, we know that for the value, there's some great nutritional benefits that beef has for you per ounce, and so we'll stack up against anybody in that regard. And we think consumers see that. I would say that a lot of our diet preferences right now with some of these carnivore or other paleo type diets that are eating more beef or need more red meat. Yeah. And so that's helped us too. And so we appreciate everybody that enjoys a good beef meal. Morning, noon, or night. Well, you can eat it any time of the day.
That's a good point. And I, although my wife's from Biloxi, surprisingly she's a meat and taters girl, and that may be because her mother was from the upper Midwest, Minnesota, which is a staple.
Certainly a meat eater from up there.
I think she inherited that. So, and she's good at cooking it too, so it works out well. The industry overall across the country, though, it's doing well. One that I've seen that also struggling, seen some recent reports, is the catfish industry, which we talked about this on the show, Rhino and I did last week. We still lead the nation in terms, right, of I think acres underwater dedicated to catfish.
I believe so. I was fortunate. Farm Bureau took a group of legislatures on a catfish tour here back in May, and I had, other than eating it and occasionally fishing for it in a pond, I didn't have much exposure to catfish, so it was great to see what those guys do, and I didn't realize how long it takes the catfish to go from a
fingerling, I think they call
egg,
it,
or even from the egg.
Eggs, yeah, to a fingerling.
It's 2+ growing seasons.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So you're looking at 2 years plus that those guys are caring for those catfish, keeping them alive, feeding them, monitoring their oxygen. There's a lot of work that goes into that to get that nice. And look, I'm a beef guy, but I love some fried catfish.
Yeah, sure. And, Mississippi farm-raised catfish.
We do it good. My hats are off to those guys, and I can't speak authoritative on their markets, but I know that as with any farmer, we would like to get more for our commodity price.
Sure, they're struggling. They report that they're struggling financially, and they said that mainly it's the cost of inputs.
Well, and that's
affecting all the agriculture.
Yeah, and so when we started off talking about cattle being a bright spot, look, our inputs are out the wazoo. Fertilize has certainly been affecting us. I need another tractor right now, and I just can't pull the trigger for what it's costing me, and the interest that we're paying on being our operating loans or equipment or anything like that is eating us up. All the inputs that we buy, feed, fertilize, fence, parts,
diesel,
certainly diesel. Do not forget diesel right now. It's I'm putting off some work I need to do with some heavy equipment on my farm strictly because I don't want to burn the diesel that it's going to take to do it right now, personally speaking. So diesel is certainly a factor in all of farming operations right now. So across the board, in whatever farming it is, inputs are killing us. And then, we have to keep an eye out on taxes. We own a lot of land to do farming in a lot of rural areas. And those local governments depend on that land tax to fund them. And so we've seen cases that continues to rise, and that's something I'm certainly concerned about in the legislature. When we do things that we're not passing some type of burden on to create more taxing to fund something back home in the county.
Talk about that, Senator, because that's property taxes have probably gotten more attention just in the public in the last year that I can remember, a great deal of the reason for that is when DOR told all the tax assessors go out and update the value of properties in your jurisdiction. That affects the farms as well.
That
right?
affects everybody.
Yeah.
The homeowner, the farmer, the person with the mobile home. It affected everybody out there, and so that's we break down a per acre, be it cattle, be it catfish, whatever. It's a per acre cost on our inputs, and so taxes are part of that. And so, you take a place like Madison or the Coast or DeSoto County, you've got a lot of rooftops to create revenue from. But you get down where I live, where my farm's at in rural Jeff Davis County, or you get to some of the Delta counties or some of the other counties scattered across where you don't have those rooftops to generate that income. And so farming land, agricultural land, takes up a lot of that space in terms of revenue out there. Even with the farming exemption that they often have for the class of land there, they're still being taxed on that. And so oftentimes there's nowhere else to get. Can't blame our county supervisors. They've got to fund their government. They've got to keep the roads up and the schools open, and so property taxes is really the only mechanism we give them where they have much control over.
For a county. That's about it.
Yeah. For a county, there's nothing else out there. So, I know the Speaker has created a task force over on the House side to look at this. I think they're more interested in kind of homestead property, the actual homestead section of that, maybe not as much as agricultural. I had a bill last year you and I talked about offline one day about, that would create a state study committee, and it would be made up of some people smarter than me to let's look at some ways to see if we can maybe give some relief to these counties or find another funding mechanism rather than property tax to do that. Now, basically, I don't know where that is. Again, I'm not smart enough. We'll figure that out and get some folks together and see if that's some type of use tax, sales tax, or something else that we could do to help fund these local rural governments.
That's what many counties in other states do. They also have some component of sales taxes that stays with the county.
So I'm encouraged that this is become more of a conversation.
We got a break. Hang around.
Sure.
You're good? Yeah, we got Senator Andy Berry in the Element Wealth studio. Coming right back.
Patriotism is a lie.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let's go.
She turned up her nose as she walked by my Cadillac. From the corner of my eye, I saw you and you laughed.
We are back with you in the Element Wealth studio. We are chatting with Senator Andy Berry. He's also the executive director of the Mississippi Beef Council. So appreciate you, Senator, giving us kind of an update and overview of the state of the cattle industry and just agriculture in general. As you know, we're so blessed here in the state of Mississippi with many great farmers who comprise our largest industry. It's about 12% of our total GDP.
I'm glad you mentioned that it still is, in spite of data centers and battery plants and other things, agriculture is still our largest industry. It's oftentimes, I don't think, maybe treated that way in our state house down there, and so that's something that I've always, in my limited service, is to try to remind people that, hey, data centers or plants or whatever else we're bringing in economic development is great. We're glad to see it, but let's don't forget about the one that brought us here. Don't quit dancing with the one that brought us, and that's agriculture.
Well, to your point, though, I got to tell you, I'm worried about the financial challenges that they are facing. This isn't anything new. I mean, a couple of years ago, I remember having the lieutenant governor in here, And it looked like that the row crop farmers weren't going to be able to get loans to put seeds and plants in the ground.
And, I don't know that that's changed a whole lot since then. It's still a struggle. I think there's probably some people out there that were farming last year that are not farming this year. And if things don't change, we may see some more of that next year.
Well, and then I just was talking about the catfish farmers. There's stories about that. I've seen interviews with farmers both in Mississippi and Alabama, and they're discussing the challenges they're having, mainly, again, because of the cost of inputs, which you alluded to is affecting the cattle industry and it affects all the agriculture industry. All that stuff's more expensive. And we should point out, and I'll let you tell the audience about this, you don't have control over what you sell your product for.
No, not at all. Our commodities traded on the Chicago Board of Trade. There's two contracts there. A feeder, which is basically what our cow-calf guys here in Mississippi produce. Then there's the live cattle. That's the cattle going into the packing houses to turn into meat. So that's two different weights, 750 pounds, 1,200-pound animal on the live cattle. So that's publicly traded. And so everything that we price is reflected off of that. And what I'd like to remind folks, pick on other agricultural folks, is that if I've got some pine trees, I might can wait a year or two for a better price. Unless if you watch out for bugs, they're going to be okay. If I got some grain storage, I can put my grain up for a little bit. But I can't do that with cattle. And cattle have a life cycle that they've got to go. And there's a point in time where they are not as valuable because they've gotten older. And so that's the case. You've got to sell, and so if the market changes, you're just out of luck that day if that's your day to sell. And so we're really influenced and affected by changes in market, by events that drive our future trading up or down.
Yeah. Let's turn our attention to the legislature and your service as a state senator. You guys just completed a special session to really kind of clean up this whole youth court situation. Well, your thoughts about that, Senator?
Well, one, I would love a little bit more heads up. I've
heard that from a lot.
I was in Denver at a meeting when I got the notice, and American Airlines just seemed determined not to get me back. But I finally rolled in about 8-9 o'clock that first night.
Oh, okay.
So I was there for the.
They were still going.
They were still going. Yes.
Yeah.
It turns out I didn't miss a whole lot, but I was greatly concerned about that. Me and American have had some troubles here lately on getting to places, but aside from that, from the Senate side, I think that we were pretty comfortable with what we passed on the youth court bill. It was by and large what we had already done in regular session, a few little tweaks here and there, and I would probably need one of my lawyer counterparts to explain it in a manner to so the audience could understand that. But Gerard, what I'd say with that is, a large part of my district is Simpson County, is kind of the heart of my district. And, I heard from people time and time again that we've got to do something with the youth court, particularly in the light of early June, of the murder of my friends and neighbors, Billy and Carol Blair. And so we saw that, was a 17-year-old man that's been accused of doing that. And just how could rumor that he had been in and out of some trouble, is the word of that, and how could we let this get to that situation? So I would say that people were hungry where I live at to have something done for youth court, and the referees have done a great job. I go to church with one; she does a great job with what she does, and I heard Senator Wiggins on with Richard the other morning. He said, we were asking part-time people, as good as they may be, to do a full-time job with the referees, and so now we're going to have a full-time job judge that's out there doing this, and so I think that's one of the main takeaways. And then, something that we've talked about internally with some of my colleagues in the Senate is, we're proud that we've got some money for some housing. I would argue that we might even need some more spots to put people that's a little bit more regional for these youth places to house them when they get into a tight, and get them straightened out and have some intervention, because we've not done that. So I'm glad that we've got some money in there to fix up in some other places to house these juveniles, because I've heard from my sheriffs and my DA, hey, we can arrest them, but we don't have anywhere to put them.
Yeah.
And so it's a whole different ball game with the minor versus an adult in terms of how you house them. So I'm excited about that and hope maybe we can expand that. As bad as that sounds, that we need, we shouldn't as a society even need to be thinking about this, but we do. Yeah. Unfortunately, we do, and so we need to make sure we're putting people where they need to be when they commit a problem or a crime. One
of the big concerns I heard, I know you did as well, is just how the proceedings and the law and regulations, everything else that enters into that process, were just being applied inconsistently across the state. And so what this did is create a set of standards that will make it more uniform.
And that's what we hope we'll see. And again, with full-time judges there doing it, I hope we'll see some consistency, and I hope we'll see some better results. And look, what you hope is that if a child finds themselves in this system, is that we take some corrective actions and they turn their life around.
Yeah, get them on the right path.
They're not in the system again. Is what I would 100%. Is what I would argue. Is that what we're trying to do? I hope is an investment in youth to get them when they do err. And look, I've been a teenage kid. We do stupid stuff, and as teenagers, some more than others. But hopefully, as your brain develops and you age, you grow out of that, and so that's what I hope we see with these youth and this new system that we're going to put in place. Is that it will have a positive impact on the youth of Mississippi.
And we just had law that came out of the Senate, right? That requires minors 13, I think, to 18 are now, if they commit certain violent crimes.
Capital type offense, yes. Yeah. They'd be charged as an
adult.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense. Hopefully that will serve as a deterrent.
If you're going to play big boy games, you're going to win big boy prizes. And so that's what I would argue with that law. Even if you're a teenager, if you're dumb enough to do something stupid that carries that type of penalty for an adult, you're facing the same thing.
I think we would agree, though, that the bigger problem is how do they get to this point? I mean, what would possess a teenager to go commit a violent crime like this?
I'm not the best Christian that there ever was, but I do claim to be a Christian. I think we've seen a loss of God focus in our homes. I think we've seen a breakdown of the family structure in a lot of our homes.
Agreed.
Unfortunately, that's not something that government can fix, and so we're having to deal with the consequences of that. And until there's a revival in the home, and look, I think we've seen some of that. I think we see people working in some nonprofits trying to do that and trying to build that home structure back. And that's what we need, but short of godly intervention and guidance in our homes, we're going to continue to see this.
Senator, where you talked about over on the House side, the Speaker of the House creating these 6 committees earlier this year that are charged with at least study and analyzing various critical issues, school district consolidation. I'm wondering if it's time that we come together in a bipartisan way to talk about that very issue, which is just the breakdown of the nuclear family. We rank top in the nation in terms of fatherless homes in our state, and I think
and in the heart of the Bible Belt that we're in that shape. It's really disappointing.
Maybe we need to get together and talk about how to address that.
I don't have the answers, but
I agree.
A group of people get in a room. Surely we
can talk about it.
Surely we can figure a direction.
I agree. Senator Andy Berry has been our guest here in the Element Wealth studio. Appreciate it, Senator.
Thanks sir. Appreciate the time.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Trash and wild and a little crazy too. Some girls don't like boys like me. Oh, but some girls do. I said some girls do. Some girls do. Like boys like me. Some girls do.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We appreciate Senator Andy Berry for joining us in the Element Wealth Studio, giving us an update on the cattle industry and other aspects of Mississippi's agricultural business, and also a bit of thoughts on the recent special session called by the legislature. So related to this, Will, is a story I came across this weekend. The IRS, this is what Rhino would call the not my problem people. They are threatening to seize a Tennessee man's farm after charging him interest on a $20,000 refund they accidentally sent to him. Oh, my gosh. Wilson Perry Kirby, 76 years old, says he was accidentally sent $20,000 by the Revenue Service in 2022. He said he tried to return the money. He even hired an accountant to clean this up. Instead, the IRS is charging him interest on the money he tried to return. They're withholding his $25,000 refund, and now they're talking about taking his property. What? He says, I've tried the president, governor, mayor. They don't mind asking you to vote for them, but when you need help, you can't get a hold of nobody. That's his official quote. The IRS is now threatening to seize his farm if he doesn't pay the up to $4,300 of interest. This is just infuriating. I tell you, here's the problem with government and government systems, and to some extent, Will, we were talking earlier about this class wallet program implemented by the Department of Education for Mississippi's K-12 teachers to buy supplies for their classroom. It's like anything that just doesn't fit nicely, right, within the little cube, it just blows their mind. They can't deal with it. They're not good at managing and handling exceptions. And they need to be, because stuff happens, obviously. And this is a shame, man. 76 years old, and you can imagine what it's like trying to fight the big, bad IRS. It's hard enough when you've got some background and understanding of this stuff. But this man here, he's just producing agricultural products to feed and clothe America. He shouldn't have to worry about the stupid IRS. This is just terrible.
So now country singer John Rich has stepped in. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
Big and Rich, the country duo?
Sure.
He's obviously an outspoken conservative, John Rich is.
Yes, he is.
He always wears that big cowboy hat and got that handlebar mustache.
Yep.
He has stepped in to help. Hadn't exactly said how he's going to help, but you would think maybe he could at least get word to the president.
Yeah, they're friends.
Yeah. Say, hey, call up the old IRS commissioner and see what he's got to say about this.
Well, your rep, right? Your U.S. rep, your senator.
That should be the person.
That is who you got to go to. So I'm not sure exactly where he lives, but
just says Nashville, Tennessee.
Nashville area, yeah. So, man, I sure do hope that somebody, his rep or Senator Marsha Blackburn, she ought to take this up.
She's running for governor.
She's running for governor.
This would be...
Oh, absolutely.
Somebody in her communications team needs to find out about this and let her handle this. This would be a big PR win for her.
She could endear herself to the voters in the agriculture community, in particular, if not a lot of people who, of course, have dealt with crazy stuff. I think I may have shared before on the air. It's been a while. I had a situation, it's probably 20 years ago, when the IRS froze my bank accounts. And I had one investment account with a third-party wealth manager, and the person that handled my account called me and said, Gerard, the IRS, in the middle of the day, frozen your account. And I said, for what? And so they directed me, and I had to go through about 3 different people, landlines back then, to call. And here's what they said. Again, crazy exceptions that they don't know how to manage. They were sitting on money that I had sent in to pay my taxes, right? But didn't have any returns to apply them to. And that was causing a problem. Like, the problem was I hadn't filed 3 years of tax returns. Well, I have my CPA do my returns and file them. Now, this is before the e-file days, right? And they said they didn't have them. So, I kid you not, I finally got to talk to somebody downtown Jackson. There's an IRS office, federal government, IRS employee. And I finally got to talk to her and explain, says, well, I'm looking at the returns. I have them right here. I sent them. I mailed them. I have no reason not to. And she said, well, if you're going to be at your office, I'll come by and check them out. So we go meet in my conference room. I got the 3 booklets of my returns right there. I promise you this is what she said in a serious tone. Well, I guess you didn't do these in the hour since we spoke. No, I didn't crank out these 3 years of tax returns since you and I talked on the phone an hour ago. And so she took them. They filed them. They called me back and said, by the way, you overpaid. I said, great, send me a refund. Oh, no, we can't do that. You're past the statute. Well, what if I owed you? Oh, you'd still owe. Wait a second. I'm past the statute on the overpayment, but if I owe, there is no. I said, well, what can we do about this? I swear it's what she said. Call your rep or senator. Oh, yeah, right. So it's a couple $1,000 that I couldn't get back. Now, honestly, I don't think I overpaid. I think when they ran it through their calculations, I think they miscalculated it. That's my personal opinion. But nonetheless, this is a problem. I may see if I can run down through some contacts in Tennessee, Senator Blackburn, to help this individual. Because this is a shame. It's ridiculous.
I mean, tried to give the money back.
Tried to give it back, I know. Just absolutely incredible.
76-year-old.
76 years old, yeah. Ricky in Aberdeen says, on every one of the 13 nights that we were bombing Iran, they were steadily shooting rockets themselves at our allies. I saw that as well, Ricky. And you know something else is being reported, Will, and it's kind of hard to tell if it's rumor, if the public's being shielded from the truth. Hard to tell, but the bottom line is there's concerns that we are literally running out of missiles. And there are reports, incredible news sources. I'm not talking about internet fodder on social media, but there are reports that I believe are leaking. You know how that works in the Pentagon. It's a huge organization with a bunch of people, and they talk to the press all the time. And there are rumors spreading around the administration that the Pentagon is concealing a shortage of interceptor missiles which are needed to resume the war. Now, you could really go down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and say, well, maybe that's why the president decided against launching more significant attacks, because we don't have enough missiles. Well, the other thing I learned from reading some reports is that it takes like 3 to 5 years to make these things. I had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, I was shocked at that. So the Royal United Services Institute, I don't even know what that is, but they say they've calculated the U.S. and its allies' number of missiles used in the first 16 days of the war. They estimated 11,000. They say we're a month away from running out of missiles. Man, this is scary. This is crazy. And again, I don't know what's truth, but again, I do point out this isn't like one isolated sort of tertiary news service. This is a bunch of the mainstream media. I guess you're looking at it. You see it. It's big. I see it. It's big news. So I'm not sure what's truth and what's not.
Let's see.
It's crazy, though.
Yeah. They're saying that this is one you might have talked about this earlier, but United Nations and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, says it's Biden's fault. Said that he used up all the ammunition and that they never replaced it, basically.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that whatsoever. I mean, they never really have been fans of the United States Department of Defense, now the Department of War. All of that's believable. You do know, of course, that President Obama, he allowed our military to dwindle down to a point where if we'd have been attacked, I'm not sure we could have defended ourselves. And that's one of the first things that President Trump did was get its assets back squared away and just restore it to an effective defense force. Man, it's just kind of scary, though, to think about. We're in the Element Well studio, coming right back.
Up of Mississippi.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
So last week, the president announced that something really big may be on tap for Iran. I mean, from a military perspective. And there were reports that 150 medical personnel had been deployed to Germany. And that would be, of course, to handle injuries sustained in combat. That is the only reason you could think of that they would be just kind of abruptly assigned to that post. That's where they would be airlifted. And so there was a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation about the president ordering a ground invasion, potentially. But then he abruptly announced, well, we're going to pause it. Now, we've seen this before, and that's because he indicated that the Islamic Republic of Iran signaled it was not going to attack any ships in the Strait. But I think they've done that before, and then they've reneged it. They've violated that commitment. So 13 straight nights of attacks on Iran certainly had degraded their ability to attack commercial shipping that moves through the strait there. But last Friday, the president essentially backed off, and on Sunday, yesterday, he said that the army of Iran had halted its retaliation for 13 nights of attacks. So a spokesman from Iran said the U.S. may have devised other scenarios for the coming days, but the current situation is not what they desire. If the Americans insist on continuing the war and airstrikes, the geography of the war will expand. I don't know exactly what that means. That, sounds like the typical rhetoric that they like to spout. I think their bark is much bigger than their bite, but they certainly have shown that they have the ability to cause problems for commercial shipping, and that's the main thing with respect to moving oil through the strait to get the price of oil down. Now, it is down today on the heels of this news, of this announcement from the president that, okay, we're going to pause this and see what happens and see if we can achieve some diplomatic solution, and certainly that's been in the works for quite some while. I did catch that Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, he minced no words. He was quite direct in saying, you know what, if we need to continue on with this effort, with this strategy, to eliminate their nuclear capability, and if that means we have to deal with the pain of high gas prices for, he said, months, several months. Gosh, I hope it doesn't take several months. So be it. You can't deny that there are political ramifications of this. You just can't. Folks just at home are more focused on the price of gas, so-called affordability. Now, Brent crude is down today below $90 a barrel. It touched 100 last week when the attacks resumed and the president said, yeah, we could have something really big in store. And shipping through the Strait of oil came to almost a halt. So it's down below $90 as this halt, at least right now, but it just feels like we've been here before. This is just another chapter in the cycle, and I certainly hope that we get some resolution soon. Our U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Mike Waltz, was asked on Meet the Press yesterday whether the president had decided against escalations, and he said, I wouldn't go that far at all. Quote, the president is keeping all options on the table, said Ambassador Waltz. What the president is doing right now, as we've seen all along, is giving the talks some space. Ambassador Waltz said the talks were, quote, ongoing. I find it curious that our side says we're talking and their side says we're not. I think some of that is just because of the way their leadership operates. It's about saving face as they see it. We can't let our people know that we're actually talking to come to some peaceful settlement. On the other side of this is, if you've checked it out, we're dealing with 4% inflation here, 88% inflation in Iran. Folks are starving. It's a huge economic problem. So Operation Economic Fury, I think, is doing more of the trick. Coming right back. Stay with us.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.